Hey, what's going on, guys? We'll give you guys a chance to come into the live stream, into the conversation, and take your time and get comfortable here. And we will begin the podcast in one moment here.
Can my side be firm?
My side's super soft.
Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, my Black Business School. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to settle into the conversation. I want to say welcome, everybody, to drboycetv.com. This is the home for intelligent Black people. And I see T Hill and Flash is Fresh TV is in here, and Legends of Sleepy Hollow and Bridget Thomas. How you doing? From Oakland. Shout out the city that you're from. Shout out what city that you're in. I want to say hello to everybody on Instagram. Instagram is The Real Boyce Watkins. And I want to warn everybody in advance that my food, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky for the Diverse Entrepreneurship Summit, and my room service food is on its way, and they're going to knock on the door at any moment. And just so y'all know, I'm going to interrupt this conversation to go get my food. But fortunately, I've got some backup here to cover the situation while I grab my food. Is Dr. Rick Wallace. Rick is he's a psychotherapist, from what I understand. Psychology is his thing. He understands a lot about the mind and how it affects Black people, and he's very interested in the Black community. And he's a very smart brother, and I'm very, very happy to have him. He's also coming to speak at the All Black National Convention this year, and so I would like to welcome my brother Rick Wallace. How you doing today, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you. Now, let me shout. I'm gonna shout out a couple of your cities before we get started. Let us know what city you're from. I see Legends of Sleepy Hollow from Brooklyn, Charles from Phoenix. Okay, Joan from Vietnam. Wow, that's. I don't think we have a lot of people from Vietnam that come through. We've had places like Pakistan and parts of China and stuff like that. But Vietnam, I haven't seen a Vietnam in a while. Bridget, how you doing? T Hill from Washington D.C. Good to see everybody. I see Danielle from Haiti, Casey from Cleveland. Let's see. I see Peterson, Detroit. What else? Dallas. From Chicago in Los Angeles, but also went to Moore High School in Louisville. Okay, so you're from the Ville. Great. Well, too bad. If you were here, I'd invite you to the Diverse Entrepreneurship Summit. If anybody wants to come see us today, you can go to drboycelouisville.com. And also, if you want to see Rick do his thing at the All Black National Convention, along with many, many other great people, go to allblacknationalconvention.com. Now, everybody, please hit the thumbs up button, share and subscribe button, and let's get this conversation started. Rick actually had some interesting things to say about Malik Yoba. Did anybody, yes or no? Give me a yes or no. Did anybody see the whole thing with Malik Yoba? Are you familiar with him? I assume everybody knows New York Undercover. If you've I never really watched the show, but I do know of the show. And I was actually gonna work on a project with Malik at one point. He just never came through. But is everybody familiar with what's going on with in terms of him, talking about being interested in transsexual women, and a lot of people kind of thought that was a little bit interesting that he was sort of doing this public confession, and then it became even more dramatic. So Rick has some interesting perspectives on it. And I would like to, while I grab my food because they just knocked at the door, I would like, Rick, could you begin the discussion for us on, Malik Yoba and sort of your perspective on what you're sort of seeing here?
Sure. First of all, what I want to do is just introduce the way that I approach dealing with things. I was just explaining to Dr. Watkins that I don't focus on personal opinion, including my own. I look at the Black collective as a whole, and I look at everything that I do or say or address is based on how it impacts the Black collective, because personal ideas, personal concepts, personal philosophies will sometimes move away from what needs to be a unified idea or agenda. And that's okay because people are individuals. The second thing that I want to clarify is I don't attack people. I address concepts, ideas, and philosophies. Everybody has a right to live. Everybody has a right to make their own personal decisions. I talk about it. One of the things that is noted on my channel on YouTube is that I don't like to be asked questions that pulls me into ongoing conflict between my brothers and sisters who are out trying to make an impact. I'll talk about a behavior, I'll talk about an idea, but I don't get drawn into that because I don't believe it helps. With that being said, with Malik Yoba saying that he's trans attracted, first of all, listening to the morning show interview, there are a couple of things I noticed. Number one is he admits that it was a calculated move. So that lets you know that there are underlying motives, ulterior motives to doing it. It wasn't just a coming out idea, that there are some things that follows. And they mentioned those things like a big event that's happening at the end of this month that they were trying to bring attention and conversation to. But it also points out some things that I've talked about, written about, spoken about for years now. And it starts with the LGBTQ community. And from what I understand, by watching that interview, they've added a couple of more letters that I haven't had time to familiarize myself with. And I'm not going to even try to address that right now. What I want to address real quickly is, in listening to this interview, the first blaring observation I was able to make, with the exception of the word trans, the next most commonly used word that's not a definitive article or something like that, but an actually descriptive word, is trauma. So, and that's something that has been prevalent in any research that is done in my dealings. And the thing is, I deal with the homosexual or gay community or the LGBT community now to make sure I don't want to leave anybody out, because I get blasted by them at least once a month. So I work with them directly. I've had a roommate who was openly gay. And so there's no hatred, there's no fear. They love to tag people who disagree with something as being homophobic. I don't have a phobia. As a matter of fact, I have a strong love for all my brothers and sisters, despite what their orientations are, their gender identity. That doesn't matter to me. I'm about Blackness. I'm a Black man before I'm anything else. I'm a Black man, a Black husband, a Black father, a Black business owner. So I love Black. But the thing that I've noticed in dealing with the community on my own is that is a highly pervasive common chord, which is trauma, predominantly in childhood, which is also recognized and known as adverse childhood experiences. And those have magnificently powerful impacts on our behavior as adults. So I don't want to say just because they have trauma in their lives that that's the common thread that's causing them to identify as they're identifying, because anybody who understands research and understands studies and understands all that, there are other variables. And even in highly controlled groups, you still have these variances that you have to make, give allowance for. What I'm saying is you can't ignore it. You can't ignore that trauma is almost always present, and it's almost always sexual abuse. And so that was the first thing that blared out to me, was there's this talk about trauma. Every person in the room admitted that it happened, including Malik, saying starting at age 7 was the first time. I think it said again at age 13, and then at 15 he was stabbed and some other things happened, and then he was kicked out of the house at 16. And then he at 19 he had his first encounter with a, as he put it, trans woman. And the other thing, and then I'll turn it back over and see if there are any questions. The other thing that really stood out to me was their forceful intent to introduce a new vernacular, a new set of terminology to define certain statuses, identities, behaviors. And anytime, if you want to control the people, control the vernacular. Because as you shift vernaculars, you also shift parameters on how things are viewed. And that's why, I believe a lot of what we have right now, one of the things we don't have that other immigrants have is their native language. And that impacts us psychologically. But also introducing a new language, it redefines the parameters of what's acceptable and not acceptable. What's gay now isn't gay. Like, for instance, one of the things they said that can be confusing if you don't take time to really break it down. And what will happen is most people who are, and I hate to use this term, but intellectually lazy, meaning that I don't want to figure this out, I'm just going to take your word at it type people. And that's what the media counts on, is I'm going to think for you and I'm going to give you a perspective, and that's the perspective you're going to judge everything on. Well, what happens is when someone says, well, we actually have trans women, meaning a man who is now identifying as a woman who sleeps with women. So now you have a trans man who's identifying as trans lesbian. And so we're going to cloud the waters with that. And again, my thing is more on, but I'm listening to, and I'm going like, there are all these different new things. And every time somebody spoke, they were corrected if they weren't using the proper terminology. And so my focus in looking at that is twofold. Number one is, I don't want to minimize the reality of what's going on. There are transgendered people being murdered. But that's something else I noticed. I noticed that when it was brought up that some people believe the reason that transgender people are being murdered is for this thing called stealthing. Stealthing is when you move in on a guy as a transgendered woman and don't identify yourself as such and present yourself as what they call cis women. It's no longer, if you are a natural woman who identifies with your gender assignment that you've had since birth, that's on your birth certificate, you're not just a woman now, you're a cis woman. Again, the changing of terminology. So now trans woman doesn't sound as bad.
Well, let me jump in and ask you this, Rick. So cis, I've seen that word cis a lot.
It's a genetic scientific terms that means on the same side. It means the same. So in other words, you haven't shifted. So you have cis men.
I'm a cis man.
According to the new terminology and the way they're using it, you would be a cis man, I would be a cis man, and anybody that's actually changed their gender but from what their original assignment was would be a trans at some form and shape. And they look at trans from the person who first identifies and still looks like a man all the way until genital reassignment. So all of that is trans. And then there are the different valuables. What I do want to put in is I don't want to minimize the reality of what those people go through. That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to tell them to change. What I'm saying is, if you don't know and you're not 100% certain and aware and have an understanding of what you're going through and why, then your reality isn't real. That's my thing. Now, if you get treatment and you heal, for everyone that's dealing with sexual trauma, and I'm not just talking about transgender gay people, I'm talking about anything that you're dealing with in life right now. If you haven't dealt with the trauma in your past, that trauma is impacting how you're moving through life and you're not getting the full experience of life. You're not truly living. So my thing is, if you go through counseling, not to change how you feel about your gender, not to change how you feel about your sex, but to understand who you are, and you go through this healing process and you experience that and you decide, you know what, I still want to be that, power to you, more power to you. My thing and my concern is it's being so pervasively pushed as an agenda, and anyone who doesn't agree with it is immediately attacked to the point that they're making it a politically correct idea or concept. And now they're putting it in front of children. And we all understand that at a certain age, children are absorbing all the way up to maybe 5 or 7 years old. They're in a state of theta where they're just absorbing life and understanding what the parameters are, how I'm going to live through life, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. And you're introducing a new idea to them. And yeah, they're going to jump on it. So that's a concern of mine. So, but I don't want to sit up and say, you know, I have no feelings. Like I say, I've worked with a number of people. I have more than a couple of people in my family who are part of that community. And I talk to them all the time. I talk to my former roommate all the time. We're still friends. I'm not judging you because of your lifestyle, but if you ask me, and all my friends know, if I don't want him to tell me how he feels, don't ask him, because I'm not with you to talk about your sexuality or your gender identity. I'm here to.
Let me jump in and say this though. I'm gonna tell you this, man. I think that no matter what you say right now,
Oh, they gonna come for me.
Yeah, they gonna come for you. There's nothing. It's a simple agenda, right? It's like, agree with us or we're gonna fuck you up. Like, period. Like if you don't agree with us, we're going to make things up about you. We're going to attack you. We're going to try to put dirt on your name, do whatever we got to do, because it's all about a bullying kind of thing. It's like that. There is no room for that open dialogue that you refer to. And I think, and so what I decided, man, was that it's just like, it is what it is. Like, I don't care who you're having sex with. I just want everybody here to know right now, point blank period. You can ask, get mad at me if you want. But the same way, I'm not going to go out and announce that I like black women with big booties. I don't need you to announce to me that you want to sleep with a man, a frog, or three people at once. That's, to me, I always felt like that was a personal thing. And it's very weird to me when somebody walks up and says, I sleep with men, and I need you to tell me that that's a good thing. I don't care. You know, it's just, I just think we got to, this whole idea of sexual confessions kind of is.
It's a part of the normalization process. If you go back to 1972, I believe, when it was officially removed from the DSM, and around the same time, 73, 74, they had the conference or the commission on depopulation, which was a global thing, but the U.S. was, I think David Rockefeller was over it. And if you look into that, I think it's the NSSM 200 and the NSSM 2000, you look at the need, the study that says there's a need for depopulation, and then there are the methods. And there was sterilization, there was war, there was all these things, and the homosexual agenda was a part of it. As a general rule, homosexuals will not reproduce. Now, obviously, they've evolved and they've become a lot more complex in the way they move in their communities. So they are able to continue moving forward in a number of different ways. I've seen people in the community who identify as men who are actually women come out of that long enough to bear a child and give birth and then go back to being that. And so they're in survival mode in a number of different ways. And like, you're right, like I said, they come at me before, and, you know, I prepare for, you know, the moment I said I'm gonna talk about it, I already knew. But what I wanna do for the people who actually care about the conversation, you said, your channel is about people who think. And so my thing is, there is a real need for space. And I wanna say that first, there's a real need for space for people in the community. I don't believe in harming people because you disagree with what they're doing. I do believe in being open and transparent in how you live in your life with someone who is still functioning from a perspective of, you know, if you were a man at birth, you're a man now. If you're a woman at birth, you're a woman now. That person needs to know it. Now, if you get a person like Malik Yoba who says, I'm trans attracted, you know, I like, you know, what they call cis women. And, you know, I like, if you look like a woman and I find you beautiful, I'm good with it. Okay. Now that person, you obviously don't have to say anything to, because they're ready to run the gamut. But I believe that you have to do that. And I do believe that that is part of the problem. I also believe hatred is a part of the problem. I believe that when we see someone that doesn't think like us, that don't move like us, that don't hold the same values, we have been trained to be very, very hostile towards that as a means of protecting our own space, our own values and interests and principles. And it makes it very difficult to coexist. And there are a bunch of things along that line, but yeah, it's going to be the hardliners in that community are going to come, and then they're going to ignite things. I have a partnership with a young lady where we set up and we promote businesses. We help businesses write their plans and all that stuff. And we have about close to 70,000 followers on Facebook on our page, Black Business Owners Network. And I posted one thing about the force and the pushing the agenda to emasculate Black men. And literally, she said, "Have you checked the page lately?" I said, "No, I haven't seen it," because she pretty much manages it. I produce content, but she manages all of the administrative stuff on it. She said, "You might want to go look at your last post." And they were going in. There were people saying, "I'm getting off." I mean, and it was one person that got it and took it to the masses. And people who didn't belong on the page were showing up and giving their input. So it is what it is as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, well, I've seen that happen. And that's what it is. It's sort of like I found that people of a specific ideology run in packs, particularly those who are just pissed off and bitter and negative or whatever, and extremists. So for example, I happened to propose to my fiance, and it was recorded, and I threw it up on YouTube because I said I believe in Black love and I love Black women. So I felt like the community. I felt like I could benefit the community by showing a Black man getting on a knee and honoring a Black woman. That was my agenda, right? I had an agenda, y'all, just in case you want to know if I had it. Everybody got an agenda. That's mine. And then the next day the video had 100 and something thousand views. And a lot of the views were just, congratulations, this is great. But then there were a lot of people in there that had almost shaped a conspiracy theory about, this is fake. She doesn't even like him, and da da da. And I thought that was fast. And then what happened was a lot of the comments were exactly the same. They sort of this group thing, like everybody was saying the exact same thing. And then my manager came back and said, "Yeah, well, on Lipstick Alley, they shared your video." And the first person said, "This video looks fake. It looks like he ain't even really proposing to her." And everybody ran with that same narrative. And and so you have basically like, I don't know if they would be troll farms, or just like trolling is an industry now,
Yeah.
and so ultimately I think what you just got hit by a swarm of trolls. That happened to me. I had a bunch of feminists that did the same thing once, where, I made one little comment and they all came in. And what was fascinating was that, again, all the comments were the same. I was like, this is really interesting. Like, these are not independent thinking people. These are people that are just repeating after each other. But I think part of my heart goes out to the individuals like that, though, because maybe the reason they gather in that way is because they're hurting. They feel rejected by society. They feel like they're not getting the respect they deserve, and so you want to hear it out. But at the same time, it becomes a huge threat to freedom of speech, democracy, all these things. Like you see what they're doing to Dave Chappelle now. Let me ask you this, Dr. Wallace. By the way, I'm speaking to Mr. Rick Wallace. We're talking about Malik Yoba and everything else. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't done that. And Rick is going to be at the All Black National Convention in Houston if you want to meet him in person, along with Jade Arundel and everybody else. Go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you want to get a pass. So, Rick, let me ask you this, man. The Dave Chappelle thing. I thought the Dave Chappelle conversation on all of that was a breath of fresh air. Not because I agree, but because I'm happy when somebody says what's really on their mind, as opposed to trying to fit in this false box of political correctness. What were your thoughts on Dave Chappelle's skit, his whole routine, Sticks and Stones, if you happen to see any of it? And what do you think that kind of does for the conversation?
First of all, it was brilliant. Brilliant in the writing, brilliant in the delivery, and challenging. And so from that perspective, he has cemented himself, as far as I'm concerned, as one of the best who's ever done it, because the brilliance of what he delivers and delivering the truth. And the thing is, you got to understand his history, and you got to understand just how transparent that was. Although it was very subtle in its brilliance, it was very, very accurate and uncomfortable for a certain group of people. And those people happen to belong to a smaller subsect of people who control the power. And so it made white people uncomfortable. And it showed up immediately. The thing is, at some point, you're going to be called out on your mess. Your receipts are going to be pulled. And all of us have receipts that we don't necessarily want to talk about, we don't want pulled. But when your receipts go back 400 years and somebody does it in a way that has people laughing at the situation, but also saying, I didn't know that, or I never thought about it that way, man, he's got a point. Now, if it was just people laughing because it sounded stupid and funny, this wouldn't be a problem. He literally triggered critical thought through laughter, through comedy. And now he's a threat. He's been a threat. You got to remember, he's one of the few people who in Hollywood who refused to put a dress on, a few black men who refused to put a dress on and walked away from, I think, what, a $50 million contract at the time, and moved to Africa. When he had the Dave Chappelle show, he was ringing up with a $50,000 contract, and he was doing the show with Martin. I forgot wherever Martin was, the criminal pretending to be a detective. And they got this scene in the store where he's a crackhead now. He's a former partner, a stick-up kid, but now he's lost it and he's on bad luck. He's trying to rob a store. Martin goes in, talks him down, but it's a part where they want him to put a dress on. And they start trying to convince him, hey, you know, Martin's done it, and they're naming all the people who've done it. And he said, well, that means it doesn't need to be done again. I don't want to do it. And so what happened is, ultimately, that person, I guess, who was a show producer, went out, and the director came in, and the director tried to talk him into it. And the more people were trying to put pressure on him, he felt it was something more to it than just trying to get me in a dress. And he came alive. Wait a minute. That's how they're disempowering black men, because there's an emasculation that goes along with that image. And when you consistently portray a black man in an emasculate way, it takes away from his masculine expression. And so they knew that. Most people don't, but they understand the power of propaganda. They understand what we present has power. We'll give you access, but we're going to emasculate you in the process so that you do what we want you to do and that no one takes you seriously. Because what I learned in watching our people specifically is that while black women will befriend gay men and have gay friends, they won't follow them. You never see a gay man or openly gay man out leading. They'll friend you and they'll everything, but when it's saying, hey, look, we moving forward, we're changing things, we're shifting, they want a man that they can look at and see someplace they can hide and be protected. And on that note, I want to, first of all, commend you for the way that you did do that with your fiance. Those who are from my channel know I celebrate my wife all the time. I worked hard to prepare myself for her, and I do everything I can to protect her, to nurture her, to care for her, and I do it a lot. And it actually is and they love my wife on my channel. It's like, hey, when is she coming back? It's hard getting her on because she's the opposite of me. I can get in front of a camera and go for days. It's like sticking her with pins to get her in front of a video camera. But they are demanding her because they heard so much about her. And then when they met her, they found out he wasn't lying. She's on that. She's an author. She is a childhood sexual abuse and rape survivor. How I met her is I counseled her. And then we broke our professional ties. She went her way. I went my way. She came back about a year. We started talking, and I had spent a year with her. So I knew who she was as a person. We never dated. When she came back, we talked on the phone a couple of weeks, and I say, I want to marry you. We got married. Been married ever since. I'm about character and commitment, because I can say I'm dating you for a year and I get to know you. The person you're going to be 3 years from now is the person is not going to be the person I just got to know. So what I have to do is understand marriage. So marriage to me is first and foremost a commitment between two people who have similar agendas or visions. And then you make it work, because you can be clicking in the beginning. And we've all been there where we just click with somebody. It was off the chain. It was hot. 2 or 3 years later, you looking at them, man, I can't stand them. And you grew two different ways, and you didn't understand that the marriage had to be bigger than the individual. And so I commend you, because that's, to me, something that needs to be out there. And the reason I do it is because I want people to know that it can be done, because there's this big push to create the gap between the black man and the black woman. And so I want people to know that you can stand together, and you can even have some philosophical differences, but if you have the same agenda and you're heading in the same way, you can make it work. So I commend you for that.
I agree with you, man. I mean, I think that, the whole agenda to emasculate is, it's consistent. I mean, right. You look at the history, you just see all the efforts to neutralize the threat. The masculine black male is seen as a threat. And you go to Hollywood, and Hollywood I have my students read the book How the Jews Invented Hollywood, not in any sort of anti-Semitic way, but in a way to say, here's how you build an empire. When you're dealing with oppression, here's how you build an empire that fights back on the oppression. So I admire what they did with Hollywood, but at the same time, I want them to understand the darker aspect of that, in the sense that there was always an agenda. There's an agenda first to control the way the world sees you, and then you get to control how other people are seen. Because you control media.
Right.
It's not a coincidence. You look at New York Times and all these cable networks, Viacom, which runs BET, and all these other networks that all get rooted to this community that's only about 2.5–3% of the population, but their tentacles are just everywhere. And
Right.
it's not again. This is not even you don't have to be anti-Semitic to say any of this. I would never want to be, but it's just reality, right? And it says to Black people, you want to be strategic in controlling the message about your own people, because if you don't control it, somebody else will. Now let me tell everybody who you are real quick, brother. Before we move to the next topic, because I'm gonna ask you another question in 1 second. I'm
Okay.
speaking with Mr. Rick Wallace. Rick is, as you know, he's a very knowledgeable man. I see you guys in the chat. I really like what he has to say. He's a very smart brother. He's going to be at the All Black National Convention. He's going to be one of our panelists there. We have a long list of people that are going to be there. Everybody from Willie D from the Ghetto Boys to Dr. George C. Frazier, Vicky Dillard from Fly Nubian Queen, Jade Arundel from Fly Nubian Queen. A lot of really smart Black folks that are going to be there discussing solutions, issues and topics and things that matter in our community, everything from love and relationships to politics, and of course, economics and investing and things like that. There'll be training sessions on investing. Julian Gordon, a real estate expert, is going to be there as well. So there's going to be a lot of great people there. If you want to learn more, go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. In fact, speaking of real estate, I actually just got a confirmation that Constance Carter, who runs the largest Black-owned real estate firm in California, is going to be there. And I'll go down the list real quick for you guys. Danielle Pierce, who's a wealth expert, Ronique West, Noma Langamushali Moses, who you guys have seen here, Sharif Abdul Malik, creator of We Buy Black, Michael Imhotep from the African History Network, Dr. Ron Daniels. So the list goes on. You won't regret it. You're gonna love it. And just from hearing Rick, I'm sure you guys, if you like what Rick has to say, just say something in the chat to let this brother know how much you appreciate his intellect. So please hit the thumbs up button, hit the thumbs up, share, and subscribe button. Also, if you haven't hit the notification bell to be notified when we go live, hit that bell right now. Hit the bell right now so you'll be notified every time we go live. And now let's jump back into the conversation. So let me ask you about this, brother. It seems to me that when you talk about these issues like the Malik Yoba issues, and people say, well, some of this don't add up, or well, I live in Atlanta and this is what I'm seeing, but they're telling me it's something different, or my cousin went to prison and I think that affected his sexual behavior, right? Because we know prison is such a horribly dysfunctional place that it just creates all kinds of issues, right? It seems to me like there's almost like a blockade from even exploring these possibilities or doing the research or even having a Black conversation about sexual choices and orientation, where you sort of process all the things we go through as Black people. Everything from prison to child abuse and things like that. People don't want to talk about that. They say, oh, well, if you're gay, you're just gay. Like they don't talk about these other things. They have nothing to do with it. It's just a preference, and that's why we're going to talk about it in kindergarten, whatever. And why do you think that there's such a block in terms of really trying to really look for honesty and truth in this discussion, as opposed to just pursuing some sort of agenda that's being forced onto the people?
I actually think that blockage that you talk about is real, first of all, and I believe it's coming from two primary perspectives. First, I'll talk about the least forceful or less potent perspective, and that is Blacks in general. A lot of us have, from early in life, had a certain view of the homosexual community, especially those of us that were born before 1975. We have a certain view of it. Even if we were children at the time of 1975, there was a perception. It wasn't necessarily a hostile perception. It was just, okay, that's not something you do, or if you do, you keep it to yourself. And it was pretty much that way. Again, growing up in the church, I saw it a lot because that seemed to be a hub. And so I saw it. But what happens with the people like us who see it, we see the discussions about what might be the origins of it. And I'm a person who believes in the 7 universal laws. So one is cause and effect. I don't believe you get a result without there being a cause. I don't believe in coincidence. So when you start to talk about it, there's a part of the group that says, that's just looking for an excuse. And so we don't want to talk about it. It is what it is. You either are, you are, don't tell me. And we're like that about a lot of things. But when it comes to this, we don't want to give it any reason to exist because we deep down inside don't want it to exist. And by doing that, we actually solidify their argument that they're invisible, that they're not acknowledged, that they don't fit in as a part of the population. On the other side is the potent side. It's the power side. It's power plays. It's a 40+ year, almost 50-year agenda. And it's the LGBTQ community that's saying, no, it's not that. It's not this. We simply have discovered inside of ourselves that we weren't who we were told we were. And there's no reason to talk, because see, then if you start to talk about it, if you start to talk about environment, if you start to talk about genetic predisposition, if you start to talk about childhood sexual abuse, molestation, rape, incest, all of these other influencing factors that seem to be highly prevalent when you start to discuss this topic, then you start to push it back into the realm of mental illness, back towards being in the DSM, and that is not where they want it to go. They don't want to discuss it. And the thing is, where I stand is, let's not discuss it with a bias. Let's not discuss it with a bias on your end. Let's not discuss it with a bias on my end. Let's discuss it and see what we come up with, so that we are making sure that, my whole thing is, I don't give a rat's butt about being politically correct. So I'm about being human, first of all. I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm not out to hate anybody. I am out to protect my people. So everything I fight for is lined up with the agenda of collective progression for Black peoples, not the anomaly. See, what they'll do is they'll use people like yourself, maybe even people like me, and definitely those who are, the Jay-Z's and all these that have got all the money. And they'll say, well, if they made it, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstrap thing, then why can't you make it? And what they won't acknowledge is even the best net will miss some people. And then not realize that the talented 10th was snatched out of the mist anyway, for the most part, using the talented 10th to push back in the face of the 90, when the talented 10th was literally there to pull the 90 forward. So they created a divide there. But in essence, when I look at this whole thing, I want to sit down and look at it and say, hey, let's come up with a solution of understanding this so that we can deal with it from a place of reality. But what I can't stand, and my hostility as it pertains to the LGBT, some of them letters, as it pertains to that, is not that you exist, because I'm not perfect. If I'm looking at this at that as being imperfect, I'm not perfect. So you can come into my life and find a bunch of things that you probably don't like and that probably aren't socially acceptable. Okay, so that's that. My problem is, you're doing to me what you've been complaining about people doing to you. You're trying to bully me and force me in to not only accepting you, but riding with you. I have the right to sit up and say, I love you, but I ain't good with it. Do you? And if you left it at that, me and you don't have nothing to talk about. I don't pop up on my channel or on my posts or in my books talking about, we got to shut these gays down. That's not my thing. Is stop bullying. Stop trying to force people to see it your way. If you want to sit at the table and talk about it, you got to come with a non-biased perspective. And if you're not coming with a non-biased perspective, you can't even, you holding a doctorate, no, that you can't introduce your bias into your research.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I think it's a good point. I mean, I think that, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what the long-term fallout is, right? I guess every movement has a backlash, but I feel that, when I think back to when Obama was named by Newsweek as the first gay president, because he did so much to advance the agenda, I think that there was a bitterness, I think a resentment from a big chunk of the country that felt that the Democratic Party had gone just so far to the left, and to the point where they were demonizing good people. They didn't do anything to anybody. Like my mama goes to church several times a week. And she got pissed off because she said, why are people calling us homophobic just because I believe what's in my Bible? We know there's gay people in the church. We don't mess with them. They don't mess with us. Everybody loves each other. I just can't agree because of something I believe in already.
Right.
But yet there was this whole conversation. Black people are homophobic. Whatever. And I think a lot of people were very upset about that. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna say this point blank. I know Black people who voted for Trump just because they said, I'm not supporting all that agenda that's forced on me anymore. And so I believe that, so when people try to talk about, well, where did Trump come from? How did he get all this power? I'm kind of like, well, I think that you might have contributed to that by ignoring so many people in exchange for sort of believing that because you are part of the liberal elite and you've got all this power, you got some all these media outlets, that you can shape the narrative and shape the thinking. Just force that on people.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that, bro?
No, I totally agree. And here's the scary thing about the Trump statement that you made. If nothing changes, dude's coming back for a second term. As we're looking now, if nothing changes, the Democrats have not done anything to present someone that can present a new reality that is better than what they brought to the table the last time. They're still thinking they can run on, we're not as bad as him.
Yeah.
And what they don't get is people, when they voted for him, all the stuff that we talk about that he does, he was doing it and had been brought out on it. The whole way he talks about women, that was brought out before the election, and he was voted in predominantly by white women. So you're not going to convince them that this isn't the guy when you don't have a person that's totally different than anything they've seen before. And you're going to have to address some topics that are on the table that have never been addressed before. And status quo is not going to do it for the Democrats. The lesser of two evils doesn't work for this generation. And what made Trump, to me, very influential in the entire political scope, and very few people have paid attention to it. He showed that you don't have to have a black bloc vote to win the presidency.
Mm.
He showed that you don't have to go out and pursue blacks. And you're going to get some, but the vast majority are not, and you still do it. What he pandered to was fear. Mm-hmm. Fear and anger. And what you're talking about now is the reason he probably will have, with all the stuff that Black people say, and you can go up and down social media, and they ripping dude, they giving him the business, but he's going to have more Black people vote for him this time than last time because of issues and topics like this. Traditionally, we've been stretched so far out of our comfort zone by the Democrats, and not just with their dealing with the gay agenda, but starting there. And I mean, when I go back and I look at Barack Obama, I can't think of one thing where I look up and say, okay, he made a move for us. But every time I turn around, he was making a move for them. Mm. And I said, okay, let's go look. And so we started researching all of the executive orders and the executive memos that he was writing and signing. I'm like, all skin folk ain't kin folk. Something I was reared by my great grandfather, by the way, born in 1909. So I was reared by my grandmother's father and my great grandmother. And so he said, son, just because he's smiling in your face and he look like you don't mean that he for you. You got to play the game a little smarter than that. There are going to be some people that don't look like you that'll hold you down much better than some of those that do. So you got to judge behaviors. And so when I looked at him, the behavior didn't add up. Mm. And it also caused his presidency also caused a lot of Black people who were on edge and on guard to put their guard down. Racism has to be over, right? We have a Black president. Well, not when you go back and you study all the way back into the early 80s and find out that he's been picked and literally groomed for this from the time he got into college and the connections that his mom's side of the family had to some government agencies like the CIA and other things like that. his mom's brother, if I'm not mistaken, his mom's brother or father, I think it's his
Father.
father, showed up to his, who was in the CIA, shows up to his room his freshman year in college. And then his connection with Zbigniew Brzezinski, who set up the Trilateral Commission, and how that played out, it lets you know that when they decide they want somebody in, they're going in. That's the whole reason that the Electoral College was created. Now, the way that it was worded, I'm paraphrasing, is in the case that the people can't make the right choice. So basically, we're gonna try to convince y'all to vote it in, because if the people feel they voted in, you still have the confidence in the system. And that's what I tell people all the time. Voting isn't simply, especially on a national level, isn't so much about electing officials as them taking a litmus test as to where you stand as a nation in supporting and believing in the system. Because see, when people stop voting, that tells you they don't believe it anymore. And normally revolution comes shortly thereafter. And so as long as we can convince y'all to come vote, y'all still believe y'all vote counts. And in certain ways it does. I'm not telling people that you don't vote. I'm saying that if it's that valuable, you spend it on something worth voting on. It's the same way we spend our money. We spend our money on things that aren't valuable. It's like, if we got it, we've got to spend it. No, you've got to spend it on something that's going to bring you value, something that appreciates. And if you're not spending it on something you appreciate, that what separates the consumer from the investors not spending money is what you spend it on.
That's right.
And so that's the thing. I'm not going to go out and vote for anybody in the Democratic Party solely because they're not him. I'm not voting for him either, but I'm not going to go out and vote for anybody that I see that doesn't address specifically what I'm concerned about. I'm gonna have to see policies and agendas, something I can hold you to, so that when the next time comes around, if you ain't followed through, I can put the X on you, and I'm not gonna vote for you. So that's how you start holding politicians accountable. But yeah, this entire thing is like, he's definitely a shoe-in from where he sits right now. And then as dumb as he makes himself appear, he's playing it smart, and I'm pretty sure he has people in his corner, but you got to understand, while he was birthed into money, he's played a couple of things smart that I've looked at. The fact that he's going to probably end up paying half of what he initially financed to build Trump Towers through financial restructuring, through filing bankruptcy. Because every time he files, I think he's done it like 3 times so far, he files, he restructures, reorganizes the debt, lowers the debt in an agreement, then comes back. That part that he got negotiated off, he doesn't have to pay that he initially had to pay. He's going to get it for half the price. Most people are going to say he's a poor businessman because he filed bankruptcy. No, that's how they end up keeping their money and getting stuff for less while we don't figure the things out. And it's just about stuff like that. But even with his moves where everybody's about to lose their mind with this trade war with China, if you understand, and I know you do, way better than I do, but there's a positive side to this. It's not going to be pretty for people on the short term, but you got a lot of stuff. And what people don't understand is you got a big issue in China with them stealing our ideas, our technology, and stuff like that. We're having stuff made over there. They're taking it and then making it, putting a new name on it, and you really have no way to enforce that. You have no way of saying, okay, I'm going to sue you because, okay, sue, we don't care. And you know, and so you have all these different things. And so there is a lot going on with that. And I just happened to look at it, I was like, okay, what's the angle with this? Because he's picking a fight with. And the thing is, from a communist perspective, they're going to play power, but they're built on a house of cards. I don't think, as some experts do, that they're going to ever be the world's next superpower because of the house of cards that they're built on and the fact that the way they control so much. But I think that we're definitely not where we were, and I don't think we're ever going to be back there. But I think that it's going to be less of a monopoly on power moving forward.
Well, I agree with you. I think, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And you're right. There's a good and a dark side to the trade war. Anytime there's war, right, there's a loss, but you hope that you gain more than you lose. And,
right.
You know, and some would argue that war is almost necessary to kind of figure out who should control what. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's diplomacy by other means. And I think that I think that you know, the big question about Trump is is this gonna is the good gonna outweigh the bad, when it comes
Right.
to China. And I think that the Chinese, you're right, they do live on a house of cards. If you look at their history, they've had periods of political instability, and I believe that a lot of this stability now is hinged upon this massive economic growth. So by Trump sort of threatening that, it's sort of undermining their geopolitical influence, around
Right.
the world. They're good at using their money to control people. And
Right.
when you see like it's an interesting chess game. Like, for example, I have no doubt that we play some role in all the chaos in Hong Kong right now. Like
Oh, yeah.
I know that we are in there somewhere, right? We doing what the Russians did to us, and that's what everybody does. Everybody's trying to mess up everybody else's house. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, man. So let me ask you a final question, brother. By the way, I want everybody to know I'm speaking to Rick Wallace, Dr. Rick Wallace. He is he's a smart guy. He knows a lot of things about psychology and as well as many other areas. And he's actually coming to the All Black National Convention. This is my first time speaking to the brother. Won't be my last time. And I hope you guys will do this for me. Please hit the thumbs up button right now if you haven't done that. Please hit the share, subscribe button. Hello to everybody on Instagram. The Instagram is The Real Boyce Watkins. If you're on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when we go live. Also, if you want to come to the All Black National Convention the weekend of September 27th, go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. Also, this weekend, actually today, this afternoon, I'm speaking at the Diverse Entrepreneurship Summit here in Louisville, Kentucky. You can go to drboycelouisville.com if you'd like to get tickets, drboycelouisville.com. So let me ask you this, man, just in terms of just a final closing thought, circling back to the whole, Malik Yoba conversation. I think I'll tell you, man, I'll confess, I sometimes I was talking to my mother yesterday. Actually, I talk to my mother as much as possible because I just believe in giving people their flowers while they're here. So I make it a point to talk to my elders as much as I can, just to let them know how much I love them. I'm not gonna just be crying at your funeral. I'm gonna let you know how I feel about you now. So my mother and I are talking, and we talk about all kinds of stuff and whatever. But one thing that we discussed was why people die and why death just makes sense, why death is necessary. So I told her, I said, when I think about my brother's daughter, who's my niece, I said, okay, so she's born in 2019. So that means that if she has her first child at 30, she'll have her first child in 2049. And then if that child has their first child, let's say at 30, then that child has a child in 2079. And so I said, okay, so that would be my brother's grandchild and then great grandchild, and that child will get to see the 22nd century, right? So I'm visualizing that, and I said, what if they invented a drug that allowed us to live, to the year 2079, or to the year 2100? Like how would I fit in that world? And I told my mother, I said, I don't think I'd want to live that long because I would be a dinosaur. Like I would literally, the way I view the world would be so different from everybody else. And it made me start thinking about people like my grandfather, who's 92. And I'm like, how in the world can you feel normal, in this world when you grew up in his world, where everything was so different and the ideas are constantly changing? They're going to keep on changing, and they'll be doing shit in the year 2100 that most of us cannot even relate to on any level. We're going to think it's just flat out crazy. And
Right.
So I guess the thought is, how do we balance between being open-minded and accepting change without just signing on for any crazy thing anybody brings along? Because I'll tell you, man, all these conversations about sexuality and gender and everything else, it's confusing people. I don't know. Give me a yes or no, guys, if you know what I'm talking about. Did you see that the other day, man, where somebody came out and said that there were 100 different genders? And I'm just like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't understand. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, to answer the question, how do you evolve? Like I said, I don't think I want to live that long. Matter of fact, I know I don't. How do you adjust to that? How do you determine what's acceptable, what's not acceptable? I call it character and evolution. You're going to have to evolve in how things are done. You're going to have to evolve in how things are presented, but you don't have to evolve in your standards and what you declare is right for you. You don't have to evolve in that. You have to evolve. For instance, my standard says that your standard says you need your mom so many times a week. Now, over time, that's changed how you do it. You know, it's, especially if she's, you know, somebody that's up on it, and you've went from calling on a landline to calling on a analog cell phone to calling on a digital cell phone to probably FaceTiming. And that's changed, but it's still the same standard. So that's the first part. And so that's the part of it. Another thing to me is I believe in the spiritual nature. I believe that the closer you become in oneness with the Most High, and however you see it, I don't tell people what to believe. I don't say you got to be a Christian, you got to be a Muslim, you got to be Buddhist or whatever. I'm saying that there's a connectivity and a higher level of consciousness. And the way that I view it is that this consciousness exists everywhere, knows everything, and is there. And when you are in tune with the Most High, you don't have to have, that's where the admonitions of Ma'at came from. Before there was ever the 10 commandments that said, thou shalt not, there were the admonitions of Ma'at that says, I have not, because I already knew I wasn't supposed to. So I have not. And so the way that happens is this direct connectivity with the Most High, with God, to where I don't have to ask or have rules or protocols in place to tell me this isn't something I need to do. There's something inside of you planted in each person that the more you clean yourself, the more you detoxify, the more you're able to commune on this high level of consciousness, and you simply know this ain't for me. I can't roll with that. I know it's the trend. I know everybody on it, but I can't roll with it. And be okay with it. I'm not here to tell you not to roll with it. I'm just not gonna roll with it. And sometimes you'll feel the need to explain yourself. Sometimes you just simply say, that's not for me. My spirit doesn't allow it, and be okay with it. But I do believe that that's where we stand, because character in evolution is simply saying, I have a standard by which I'm going to live my life. And it's a standard built on my focus and my understanding of what's necessary and what's needed. And I don't need to align it with anyone else. This is who I am. And I can evolve in how I live it based on technology. And I'm gonna say this and I'll be done. I can't remember who said it, but at the beginning of the turning of this century, there was a philosopher, a great mind and thinker, somebody, it's just not coming to me. But they said that in the past, illiteracy was the inability to read or write. But moving forward in the future, illiteracy will be the inability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And what it was addressing was the rapid pace of technology. With you being so prevalent on social media, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What worked in an organic mechanism of attracting followers 2 years ago doesn't work anymore. The algorithms are shifting. They're creating more ways to call you in and make you pay for what you could have got organically and free 2 years ago. And that's how fast it's changing. What worked, man, if you go back in business, I've been in business for a long time. So the traditional marketing model, you can't even recognize it in today's marketing model. Almost all of the Fortune 500 have totally flipped upside down their marketing spends and their ad budgets. And it's all in social media now, not television. Now you still have a lot in television, but compare, everybody's on Facebook, everybody's engaging, everybody's, you know, depending on what you focus on, whether it's branding, whatever, Instagram is blowing up, and it's unbelievable in that way. So the same thing is happening in every other aspect. How we communicate with each other is changing. Some for the good, some for the bad. I think that the personal, direct engagement of looking face to face is something that's lacking, and it's showing up in our personal behaviors. It's making us more callous. But at the same point, now I can talk to anybody anywhere in the world, and there's not even an international charge anymore.
I like that.
And so it's unbelievable. But yes, moving forward, that's something that we've got to be aware of. We got to be aware of that things are going to change, but standards don't.
All right. Everybody, this is Rick Wallace. Rick is a very smart brother, as you guys can tell. And he is going to be at the All Black National Convention in Houston the weekend of September 27th. So if you are Black every single day of the week and twice on Sundays, then you should go to allblacknationalconvention.com and come out, because we are going to have a great weekend, lots of learning, lots of great conversations. And hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit that bell so you'll be notified when we go live. So last but not least, Rick, I'm gonna end this conversation between two educated brothers by asking you a very ignorant question. And I want everybody to give me a yes or no on this. Malik Yoba famously said, "I'm not gay. I just like women with breasts and penises." So yes or no? Does that mean he's gay, or not? What do you guys think? What do you think, Rick? I'm sure you have a more nuanced answer, but I'd be
But
curious.
straightforward,
That sounded good.
I can't buy it. So, if you're asking me if that's homosexual behavior, I have to say yes.
Really? Yes. Okay. I'm gonna look at. I'll let you know what the comments are. Let me see. I see a lot of yeses. I have not seen a no yet. Okay. Wait. Aviolar says no. Okay. Good. It's okay. The diversity perspective is great.
Right.
When I heard that,
I'm not saying I'm right, because again, that's something that's evolving in definition. Because a lot of those definitions that were given in that interview were definitely different than the definitions that I grew up with of what is and what is. And so it totally changes the dialogue, because based on what they're saying, he's not gay because he's attracted to a certain image. Because it looks like a woman, that makes him not gay, despite the fact that genetically they are a male. So, that I guess you can call it perspective. But if I had to answer that question, I would say, from where I'm sitting, that would be considered to me to be homosexual.
Yeah. I mean, because if you are a gay man who has a boyfriend and you want the boyfriend to be feminine, right? You have, because we know they have. I'm not dissing. It just is what it is, right? You're still gay. You just want a feminine. In the gender role thing, I at least from what I've seen, I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm an expert on none of this, but it seems that sometimes you do see these gender roles emerging, and because I have people in my family that are part of that community, so I show that respect, and sometimes I'll just ask those ignorant old uncle questions like, okay, can you explain this thing to me, because I really want to understand. It's not because I'm trying to be mean. I would never be mean to them because I love them, but it's like, so why did this happen this way, and what usually happens? And they school me on it, and I like that safe space to be able to ask those questions without being accused of anything.
Right. I think that's extremely important, that they also understand that you're going to have people who are deeply embedded in their beliefs and how they view things. And so if you're expecting them to come at you the way you see you, it's going to always be conflict. You got to, just like you want people to give you space, you're going to have to give people space. And then you create the dialogue in the space.
All right, well, I love it, man. Well, you know what? This has been a very pleasant conversation. I appreciate you sharing your brilliant mind with us, man. Everybody, once again, I want everybody to go look him up, Mr. Rick Wallace. He is a very smart brother. He has a very good YouTube channel. I've seen the channel myself, and also his website. I'm gonna give you guys a website. Is it the Odyssey Project.top? Is that correct?
No, the Odyssey Project 21.top.
Okay, the Odyssey Project 21.top. I didn't know that .top was an extension, but they got so many of them now. It's like genders, right? We got 100 genders and 100 extensions. All right, so the Odyssey Project 21.top. That's where you can go follow up on his work, and you can also see him at the All Black National Convention. And I look forward to meeting you there myself, brother. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. You guys have a great day. Hit the thumbs up button before you go. Share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you'll know when we go live. And you guys have a great day. We love you, and we will see you soon. Take care. Peace.